I'm here with Mark. We just recorded our episode on the stream.tv, and my friend Matt actually wanted to ask Mark a question, which is to talk about the civil disobedience as a general strategy for change. What do you think about civil disobedience as a general strategy for change?
Oh, it's essential. It's essential. And unfortunately, I would say civil disobedience, be prepared to go to jail. Betty Croswick, 10 months she got for a contempt of court citation for blocking a construction project over an ecologically sensitive area. The courts and there's a movement afoot to put more punishment into the criminal justice system in Canada, much like it is in the United States, where people can get life imprisonment without parole for growing marijuana. Insane and absurd. People shouldn't get a day in jail for anything to do with marijuana, but to be serving entire lives, to ruin families, strip apart and create misery for decades, and also to employ people being guards. That's not the kind of America that you want to have. You don't want to have 1 million people employed being guards.
So how do we change it?
Well, we have to have a rethink of ourselves first. Change comes from within. So we have to make sure that we're not advocating violence in any way in our personal lives. And that means coercion over us. That means even if you're opposed to abortion, you should not be imperialistic and want others to have to adhere to your personal morality. And it means at the same time granting autonomy to people to lead their own lives, put in their body what they want, behave with their body as they want, and as long as they're willing to deal with the consequences of their behavior and they're not interfering in the lives of others in a direct, overt way, then we have to respect that. And that's been forgotten in America. A lot of America has always believed they have an elitist, almost kingly right to dictate to the masses a certain code of behavior. Yeah. And America is not about a code of behavior. America is about the code of individuality, where individuals decide what's important to them. And then because we have the consent of the governed, and who are the governed? The governed are all the individuals in our society. So those individuals give consent not to be governed against their will, but to be governed in concert with their mutual and agreed goals. And we don't have that many mutual, but we do have that. We all want to be free from violence. Everybody agrees on that.
I'm just saying the light is not so good. Yeah.
And we all want to be free to pursue our dreams as best as we can under our own steam.
Right. Okay.
And those two things are what we all really agree to be governed by. So we need laws against fraud and theft and coercion, but we don't need laws telling us our own personal lifestyles and philosophies.
Right. And in order to regain autonomy, the autonomy that's been robbed from us by the same institutions that claim to grant us freedom.
Well, here's what I say about going to jail, though. I believe in going to jail because unless people go to jail, we all go to jail as victims. That's the problem. Victims of prohibition. Oh, you caught me. Oh, my God, my life is ruined. I'm going to jail, right? And we feel beaten and humiliated by it. But we should have more people deliberately going to jail, chaining themselves to police stations, chaining themselves to government offices, doing more demonstrative and more dramatic civil disobedience than what we have today. I don't think rallies are enough. But I don't think people do the basics enough either. I mean, I would say strong militant civil disobedience is required, but not if you haven't already sent a letter to your representative or your congressman or your member of parliament or the mayor. I mean, if you haven't done that, don't be thinking about no revolution.
Right.
Get to writing something down. Young people have a hard time writing in the old style English a coherent letter to someone who's older, who's going to be requiring really proper structure, grammar to be convinced. So they have to take the time out. In the MySpace generation, that's really hard for a lot of people. Take time out to write, "Dear Representative, I live at 461 so-and-so street, and I'm in your district. And I know a vote's coming up about marijuana, and I would very much like you to vote in the affirmative. That's really important to me. In fact,
have you created the template?
Oh yeah. We've got thousands of young people organized on MySpace to do just this. And there's many places. Our new issue of Cannabis Culture magazine, the March-April issue, the special activist issue, has a guy who writes letters as a career about against prohibition and how he's gotten 300 letters in now in about 2.5 years, and that he only gets one in every 24 published. I thought he was just having incredible luck. That guy is a machine. He just looks at every newspaper all over the world and begins to write out stuff. And then, so we have a template in this latest issue on how people should be writing letters.
Awesome.
And so if you've written the letters and you've run for office and you've done all the things and you've given money and you're still frustrated, then you should come to me. But most people haven't even done the most basic thing possible, and that's write a letter to the editor, contact a representative. And those are just, people should be doing that once a month anyway as part of their obligation to keeping a society free. I'm not saying you should be mouthy. People have to understand you have no right to ask any representative to punish others, but you have the right to call up and ask them to liberate others. That's what it's all about. The only proper objective of government might be to protect our freedom of choice, not to restrict it. And that's what a proper politician should be doing. Anytime they pass laws that punish others, to aggrandize others, this is bad. And so the drug laws have to be abandoned. And there's lots of people in Congress who believe that. So there's momentum our way. There's momentum in the state houses of the United States. There's 11 states in the United States right now in 2007 they're going to have a medical marijuana initiative. New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, who's running for president, is going to sign into law this week a medical marijuana law in New Mexico. And he's not afraid of it having any negative impact on his president. Absolutely good. In fact, we've been supporting for the Democratic nomination Dennis Kucinich.
Yes!
And for the Republican nomination, Ron Paul.
Okay.
Ron Paul is a wonderful, fabulous person, and Ron Paul would be our best choice. But we've advocated Dennis Kucinich as well because we know him and he's definitely on our side. He's sponsored many repeal bills. But Bill Richardson's been very good too. Okay. And not only that, he said, listen, just because it doesn't matter if it's controversial, he said it's the right thing to do. I can't believe I heard that guy say that in regards to medical marijuana. So there's leadership coming from Bill Richardson. So I think he's another dark horse. Now, the thing is, all three of the people I support, they say are unelectable now. But I think a year is a long time in this pre-primary. And I think McCain, Giuliani, and Clinton are going to be scrutinized and chewed up by that time. And the dark horse is going to get a little bit stronger. And so we see a few more. And more people are going to enter the fray. So I'm very optimistic at the political levels in the United States and at places in Europe and even in places like New Zealand, Australia. But it's all 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's a constant, never-ending struggle. And I'm a big believer in going to jail and doing what you can. But you should never hurt any innocent person. It's always more, no matter what happens to me, in my legacy, no innocent person should ever be hurt. And if anything, you have to hurt yourself. That you put yourself on the line.
Sacrifice.
I had an argument with my brother for the CBC movie that's coming out called The Seeds of Sedition, The Prince of Pot story. And it will be out in April or May of this year on CBC. And we have this discussion, immediate and spontaneous, about the proper role in Afghanistan. And he actually ended up quoting the Bible as though we could advocate killing through the Bible. And I thought that was odd because the Islamic people at their worst do that too. When they're misrepresenting the Quran, they say that.
Right.
Like God's on our side, we have a right to kill the infidels. My brother was articulating the very same thing from a Christian perspective about us over there. And I thought, no. The Bible says you should sacrifice your own life. It doesn't say you can kill others. Right. The Bible says, you
turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek until you're killed. I said that's what Christ's ultimate sacrifice is supposed to prove.
Right.
Is that the reputation transcends the man.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your legacy can be far more substantial than your mere flesh and blood could ever amount to. Mm-hmm. See, that's how I think. So it matters not what happens to me. Right, I've had a good time anyway. I'm so certain, but my reputation is sealed in stone and for eternity. And so there'll be students analyzing the kind of things I did 200 years ago, 200 years from now.
Yeah.
And so what happens to me for these remaining years is not in the big picture of great importance. It merely has to be endured. If you suffer, you have to be as creative as possible in order to avoid suffering.
Well, thank you for your strength.
So I've even got I've been even studying what to do if I'm put in solitary for a month or two, right? And I like talking to myself, and I'll just structure out my book aloud in there and just go over chapters until I've tried to memorize it.
Do you meditate?
No, but I've read books about how political prisoners cope. One guy was in a jail in East Africa for 7 years, and he wrote Gone with the Wind unfortunately, the language of Kenya, Swahili, and on 3,000 cigarette papers, because they were allowed to have cigarettes. So he wrote the entire Gone with the Wind in Swahili from this beat-up English copy into Swahili on 3,000 cigarette notes, and it's the one that's currently in Kenya and Uganda today, Gone with the Wind in Swahili. And it's a big seller there, too. And
I read The Story of My Experiments with Truth, which is Mahatma Gandhi's biography, and he wrote all of it in prison.
Yeah. And I wrote my most prolific material when I was in prison in Saskatoon for 2 months on a joint. I was the janitor cleaning the toilets and the entire administration center for my jailers. And but I had a very civilizing experience on everybody, I think, including my jailers, fellow inmates. So like Tommy Chung, who I've talked with many times about going to the price of going to jail and what you get out. We both have had a lot of epiphanies. Tommy, you'll say, Tommy's never looked more healthy in 20 years than he does right now. It's because he got mentally reinvigorated there. He was able to think clearly, plan, right. He wrote his latest book, I Eat, I Chong. Yeah, there. And I had the same thing. I had many revelations. I wrote 475 pages of material. It's the first time in my life anybody offered to publish it, what I wrote. What
do you think of the paradox of stoners, quote-unquote stoners, or marijuana users being apathetic? Like either that's because that's the lifestyle.
See, I don't hire apathetic individuals, and I hire all stoners. So every stoner I hire is not apathetic.
But as a whole, I believe that
all the great creators in the world are stoners. So look, was Bill Gates apathetic? He was stoned out of his mind when he developed
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Steve Jobs still, and I'll tell you, Paul Allen is still stoned.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Oh, well,
and,
yeah.
well, then don't stop there. Moses Neimer, Much Music, stoner. Ted Turner, CNN, stoner. Jack Nicholson, stoner. Yeah, Charlize Theron, stoner. You go through every black musician, every hip hop musician, every rock and roll musician, stoner, right? So if you took out all the things in your life that were done by stoners, you would have a very barren, bleak, non-musical, very unblack experience, right? You would have Christian church music, maybe some country western, but you wouldn't have Willie Nelson, so wipe that out.
Yep.
No country music,
Or good country music anyway.
Everything you like on TV is done by stoners, I assure you.
Yep.
Conan O'Brien is a stoner. I mean, all these comedians you like are stoners.
Yeah.
I'm suspicious of people that don't smoke pot. Because I'm thinking, well, that's weird.
Well, you know what it was for me? The reason why I stopped was because I started to lose emotional autonomy among myself. Like I stopped losing control of the control of my emotions. Like I would feel depressed and not know why I was feeling depressed, or I would feel like a lack of control, or I'd feel happy out of nowhere that wasn't prompted by the marijuana. So
I never get depressed. Yeah.
That's good.
As long as there's the knowledge that I might get fucked one more time, there's no reason to be depressed.
I think it also depends on the individual's.
Don't you agree?
the individual's physiology. I think that has a lot to do with
I
it.
think you're right. And chemistry, but those are augmented by diet. I realize that.
Yes.
All the real problems I have are self-inflicted. Like, if I have a problem with pot, it's because if I smoke at night, along with other hedonistic fun activities, I like to eat. And if you eat, you're digesting. And if I'm digesting, I don't sleep very well.
Gotcha.
So if I get insomnia, it's probably because I have failed to not stay away from the munchies. Right? So, and I know that's a common problem. You just got to, and so I've got to make sure that I just have drink water after 11 o'clock, no matter how much cravings I get. And it's tough because chocolate tastes great at night after you're stoned.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But those things got full of hyper and anxiety things, and cocoa get you all jumpy. And I'm a very light sleeper. I almost never sleep, so I cannot be accenting the insomniac parts of my character. I've got to be going to drink milk or something, right? And try and take it easy and calm down. So you have to sometimes discipline yourself against your own nature for your own betterment, right? It's just you've got to draw priorities. Right. You can't party all the time.
That's true.
Sometimes you have to just look after it. So
Cool.
But on that note, I've got to go buy a TV screen for Hockey Night in Amsterdam. So